Welcome everybody. This is Evangelist Dan Goodwin. You're listening to the God's Found Jubilee program. It's good to have you with us today. And on this program, we've got an exciting program for you today. We're going to share with you some very interesting information. This is, by the way, this is July 29th or 30th, I forget, but this is Sunday. And we have got, I believe this is the 29th of July. And we are going to talk about something very interesting coming up on Tuesday. Tuesday, just a couple days from right now, is an exciting and an interesting day in Israel. I say exciting, it's a very sad day in Israel. In Israel, for many hundreds of years, there's been an event on their calendar called the 9th of Av. You understand the Jewish calendar is different than our calendar. On the Jewish calendar, their day starts at 6 p.m. Our day starts at midnight, right? So 12:01 after midnight is the next day. Tonight will be Monday. Tonight at 12:01 will be Monday, right? We know that. So tonight at 6 p.m. in Israel is already Monday. In Israel, of course, they're 7 hours ahead of Eastern time. So at midnight here, it's already been the next day in Israel because they're 7 hours ahead of us. Plus, their day starts at 6 p.m. Our day starts at midnight. Not only that, their calendar is different. Not only do they start their day different than us, but their calendar is different. Their calendar starts on the new moon in the sky. And if you understand the moon, the lunar cycles, the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. And our calendar is a solar calendar. We revolve around the sun, and our calendar, we call it the Gregorian calendar. Pope Gregory gave us the what we call the Gregorian calendar. And the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar. Now what that simply means is this. The Jewish calendar each month begins on a new moon in the sky. Now understand the phases of the moon. You got to think back now to high school, right, or grade school or whatever, where you learned about science and you learned about the moon and the sun. And of course, I don't know if they teach this stuff anymore. But in Bible days, the new moon in the sky would signify the first day of the month in Israel. Now that's not how it works here. Here, our calendar is 365 days a year. We have 30 days in some months. We have 31 days in some months. We have 27 days is it 27 or 28 days in the month of February. And then every 4 years we have a leap year where we add that extra day in February. All right, we got that. So that's important. Our calendars do not synchronize. Day one on the Jewish calendar in Israel today is not day one on our calendar. And so, in fact, Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. in Jerusalem begins day number 9 on the month they call the month Av. That's A-V, Av. So it's already that month now. Today is the 8th, or I should say Monday will be the 8th of Av. Tuesday will be the 9th of Av. Tuesday at 6 p.m. in Israel will be the next day. It'll be the 9th of Av. Now, that's not true here. I think Tuesday is actually the 1st or the 2nd of August for us. So they don't synchronize. So, all right, so understand the day starts at 6 p.m. in Israel rather than midnight here. And a month starts on that new moon, the little sliver of the moon in the sky, begins a new day. By the way, this is all in my DVD set called Prophecy Unsealed. I have a session in there called When Time Shall Be No More. I use PowerPoint slides. I explain the two calendars. I explain when a day begins and a whole lot more. So if this is going over your head or you're not grasping some of this, on my website, godsfoundjubilee.com, there's a DVD set called Prophecy Unsealed. Brand new, just come out a few months ago. And all of this stuff about the calendars and the new moon in the sky and the 7 feast, all that stuff is on that. So with all that said, let me share this with you. This is interesting. Tuesday in Israel at 6 p.m. is the 9th of Av. Now what's significant about the 9th of Av? On the 9th of Av, there's some interesting things and some very sad things that happened in history. Now this goes all the way back all the way back to the days when Moses crossed the Red Sea. They went to Mount Horeb. They got the 10 Commandments, and then they slowly made their way to to Kadesh Barnea, where they sent the 12 spies in. You remember the Bible story? Remember the little song? The 12 spies were sent in, 10 were bad and 2 were good. I remember that song. Used to sing it on the church bus. Remember the 2 good ones was Joshua and Caleb. Remember the 12 spies, they go in. They're not there to decide whether they should go in. They were sent in to find where the water is and what the land looks like and how big the enemy is and maybe some good camping places. Well, they go in there and they bring back some of the fruit of the land, the grapes. Remember, it took 2 men to carry the grapes on their shoulder. I mean, just an unbelievable place. A land filled with milk and honey, they called it. They come back and they bragged about the good of the land and the wonderful soil and the farming and the grapes and all that was there. But then they mentioned that there were giants in the land. And because of that, they said, though it's a wonderful land and we wish we could go, there's no way we can defeat those giants. And they had a vote. They had a business meeting right there. And they decided, the vote was 10-2. Joshua and Caleb said, let's go in. God will fight for us and we will take the land. And by the way, he would have. And it was God's will that they go in. And they decided to listen to the vote that they took. And Joshua and Caleb lost and the other 10 won. And guess what the date was on that when they crossed the Red Sea? When they came to Kadesh Barnea and they sent the 12, when the 12 spies came back, it was actually the 8th of Av, but at 6 p.m. that day, somewhere around this time, it was the 9th of Av, and they chose to disobey God. They chose to live by fear and not by faith, by sight and not by faith, and they chose not to go in. And God judged them, and God determined that they would spend 40 years in the backside of that desert until they all died off. And just the young ones, plus Joshua and Caleb, would be allowed to go into the promised land 40 years later, actually 38 years later. That's where this 9th of Av Judgment Day seems to have its beginnings. All the way back to Moses and the 12 spies and the 40 days in Israel, the 40 years on the backside of the desert. And by the way, the spies returned from 40 days in the land of Canaan. After 40 days spying out the land, they came back, and God gave them a year for every day. And God judged them and brought chastisement against them. And by the way, that night they changed their mind, decided to go in, and a battle took place, and they lost the battle. Many died. That's the 9th of Av. That's a bad day for Israel. There's some other things that happened on that date that I want you to know about. By the way, on the last program I did on YouTube, as well as on my podcast, whichever one you're watching or listening to, the last program was about the Temple Mount and what's happening there. Unbelievable. The Jews, as of right now, are still, for I think it's 2 weeks now, are in control of the Temple Mount. That's never happened before. And nobody's quite sure what's going to come of this. Maybe World War III, huh? Maybe Armageddon. We'll see. But it's amazing. The Jews have got the Temple Mount. So that kind of leads right in with all the turmoil going on in Israel right now with the Temple Mount and the Jews in control of it and the skirmishes and the fighting and the terrorism taking place, a lot of it because of what's going on the Temple Mount. And look what's coming up around the corner. What's coming up is this date called the 9th of Av. Now something doesn't always happen on this day, but many times in history, bad things happen on this day. And I want you to realize that. I want you to keep an eye out this Tuesday. By the way, Tuesday at 6 p.m. is actually going to be like 11 in the morning for you on the East Coast. It's going to be 10 in the morning for me Tuesday morning, because we're 8 hours difference. I'm on Central Time. Israel is 7 hours ahead. So this 9th of Av will actually begin at noontime. Or 11 o'clock, I guess, on the East Coast, is when it begins. Now, I'm not saying something's going to happen on that date, and by the way, it could happen. It doesn't have to happen exactly 6 p.m. in Israel, and maybe nothing will happen. But I'm telling you, with all that's going on, keep an eye on this date and keep an eye on Israel, and be aware that something may happen on that day. So it all seems to have begun back there with the 12 spies. Not only the 12 spies, but the nation of Israel. The whole nation of Israel rebelled and disobeyed God, and God judged them. And this has become a bad day for Israel. And it all stems from that day, way back then when they crossed the Red Sea, and God told them to go into the Promised Land, and they refused out of fear. And God seems to have given this day as a reminder of His disappointment in them and the judgment that came upon them for not living by faith and not trusting God. Look what they had just experienced. They had just seen the plagues, the 10 plagues of Egypt. They saw the greatest nation in the world, the greatest army the world had ever seen up to that day, brought to its knees by a bunch of Jews with pickaxes and just worked in the mud and made clay and were servants and slaves to Egypt. Egypt was brought to its knees by Jehovah God, the God of heaven. So that miracle, they saw that. They saw the miracle of the Passover, that final 10th plague where God killed all the firstborn who didn't have the blood on the doorpost, a symbol and a type of salvation. Jesus said, God said, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And 1 Corinthians 5:7, Paul said, Christ our Passover is given for you. Christ is our Passover lamb. His blood was shed for us. So they saw all that. And then not only that, they witnessed the Red Sea being split in two. And they witnessed that miracle. And they crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. And then they witnessed the Pharaoh's armies going in, chasing them across, and the sea closing in around them and destroying the army of Pharaoh. These Israelites witnessed all that. They witnessed the water coming out of a rock out in the desert. They witnessed all the things that they had, the miracles that took place. And they come to Kadesh Barnea, and God says, go in and take the land. And they see the giants, and they say, no, we can't take the land. I think God's a little upset with that. Now, let that be a lesson to you and I. What is it God's called you to do that you feel like you can't do? You feel like you're not big enough. By the way, none of us is big enough. But we've got a God who's big enough. And listen, we're supposed to live by faith. We're not supposed to walk by sight, but by faith. We're supposed to trust God. And so this is where this all began. Now, let me share real quickly some other amazing things that happened on that exact same day, the 9th of Av, which is coming up this Tuesday in Israel, the 9th of Av. All right? The second time, or at least these are the ones that we know of. I'm sure there are others, but these are some significant events that I printed off here that I know of. And by the way, there's a little bit of disagreement. If you go online and look some of these up, there's different people who think that some of these dates aren't quite right. That's fine. I think these are probably right, but people want to argue over them. Let them go argue with somebody else. But the second event that happened somewhere around 586, 587 BC, or so we think. And that's with Nebuchadnezzar and the nation of Babylon, who came in and took over Israel. Somewhere around 586, 587 BC, Babylon, under King Nebuchadnezzar, destroyed Solomon's temple. Now that's huge. Destroyed that beautiful temple. That happened on the 9th of Av. That's a day of sorrow for Israel. But if that's not bad enough, do you realize that later on, the temple was going to be destroyed again? By the way, on the day the Babylon came in and destroyed Solomon's temple, it's believed, and I don't know how they know this, but it's believed that up to 100,000 Jews were killed during that invasion. By the way, Daniel, the book of Daniel's probably a 17-year-old boy. Daniel probably witnessed his mother and father killed before his eyes. Daniel, how do we know? Because they're never heard of again. Daniel never mentions him. I think probably they died in the battle. Daniel is taken captive. Him and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and many others are brought to Babylon as slaves and as servants. And of course, God had a plan for those men. God had especially for Daniel. And so here they are. The first temple, 587 BC, is destroyed. Daniel witnesses that. Daniel is taken to Babylon. Now, whether he witnessed, I think the temple was destroyed in the second invasion, but somewhere before 600 BC, the temple is destroyed. And it happened on the 9th of Av. And it's a day in history that bad things happened for the nation of Israel. So what else? Fast forward about 600 years or so to 70 AD. Very famous date. And by the way, Jesus prophesied this day. Jesus dies around 33 AD, by the way, depending on who you believe and who you listen to. The historians, some people say 29 AD, some say 30 AD. I've even heard 27 AD. Most people think it was 30 or 33 AD, but whatever it was, some 30 or 40 years later, the temple is destroyed. Jesus prophesied and said that the temple, not one stone would be left upon another. That actually happened in 70 AD. The destruction of the second temple, we call that Herod's temple, happened by the Romans under Titus. And it's believed that over 2.5 million Jews died as a result of this war and the famine and the disease that followed. Over 1 million Jews were exiled in 70 AD. We call this, I believe, the diaspora. They were exiled from Israel, from Jerusalem, all over the world. That's why there were Jews in Poland and France and Russia. And by the way, still to this day, there are Jews scattered around the world. Now, many of them have come back. Do you know that I believe there's only 13 to 14 million Jews right now in the whole world? And now they're slowly making their way back to Israel. In fact, half of the Jews in the world are right now in Israel. That's exciting. And then the next biggest population of Jews is in America. Most of them in New York City area, Washington, D.C., New York City area up in there. So by the way, that 70 AD, the destruction of Herod's temple, the temple again being destroyed, the one that Jesus prophesied would happen is not one stone will be left upon another. It happened in 70 AD. Guess what the date was? The 9th of Av. Both temples destroyed hundreds of years apart on the exact same Jewish day and month, the 9th of the month of Av. That's the day that's coming up, Tuesday, on our calendar. All right, now this is one you may not have heard of. The Bar Kochba revolt was crushed. Batar destroyed, over 100,000 were killed. This is like 132 AD. So this is 60 years after the 70 AD event. On the same day, a revolt of the Jews took place again. And this also was a result of fighting with Rome, the Roman Caesar. And many Jews were killed. This guy believes 600,000 were killed. This one here says 100,000. Over here, this historian believes 600,000. So who's right? We don't know. But that's a bad day for a nation. It's a bad day for the Jews. The 9th of Av again on that day. Now this gentleman says 133 AD. This report says 132 AD. It's your guess what the actual date was. When this happened. So this is some pretty serious events that happened. We've just given you 4 events in history, all the way back to Kadesh Barnea and the children of Israel after they crossed the Red Sea. The very first time, the 9th of Av, was significant. And then we got the 2 times that both temples, and we've got 586 BC and 70 AD, the same exact date, the temples being destroyed, hundreds of thousands of Jews being killed and exiled, and then we have this battle in 132, 133 AD, where many hundreds of thousands of Jews are killed on that exact day. All right, let's go a little further here. 1290 AD, the Jews are expelled from England. And I believe I have that date in my Jubilee book concerning the blood moons. I know I have the next one in there, the 1492 date. 1290 AD, the Jews are expelled from from England on, guess what, the 9th of Av. That's a bad day in history for the Jews. Now let's fast forward a couple hundred more years. 1492, you know that date from your history class, your world history class in school. That's the date that Queen Isabella And King Ferdinand expelled all the Jews. That's the year that they expelled all the Jews from Spain. By the way, I have the date here somewhere. It was March 31st, 1492. The edict was signed. Now, that's not the 9th of Av. What they did was they gave the Jews 4 months to get their belongings and get out of Dodge. Guess what the date was when the edict ended, and the final date to be out was the 9th of Av. Again, a bad day for the Jews and a bad day. Now, Christopher Columbus is sailing during that year. You know your history there. That's Christopher Columbus traveling on the I think it was 3 ships. I used to be able to name them. I can't think of them right now, but the 3 ships they sailed around the world. Many thought they were going to fall off the edge of the world, right? All right, so that's the 9th of Av. All right, there's another one. Now, this one's a little more recent. Let me see here. 1914, World War I. Britain and Russia declare war on Germany. The First World War begins on the 9th of Av with Russia and Britain declaring war on Germany, or vice versa there. So the First World War issues are unresolved, ultimately causing the Second War and the Holocaust. 75% of all Jews in war zones, the Jews in armies of all sides, 120,000 casualties of Jews in the armies, and on it goes. 1914, the 9th of Av, this war begins, World War I, which is going to end a few years later. But this war leads right into the next war, which is World War II. And guess what? 1942, during World War II, remember America gets in 1941, and when we're attacked by Pearl Harbor, we get into the war there. But 1942, on the 9th of Av, this is sad, deportations from the Warsaw Ghetto of the Jews to the Treblinka concentration camp begin. So the Jews are moved on the 9th of Av. They began moving the Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto, a terrible place, only to be sent to a worse place, the gas chambers, the ovens of Treblinka concentration camp. And the rest is history. 9th of Av, a bad day for Israel. All right, there's some other things. 1989, Iraq walks out of talks with Kuwait, but there's something happened in 1994, the deadly bombing of the building in the community in Argentina, 86 people killed and wounded, many others. These are some things that happened on that date, the 9th of Av, which is coming up on Tuesday in Israel. By the way, it might be interesting, some of you are mentioning, are interested about Israel. Or 9/11 here. Remember the towers, 9/11 we call it, the infamous day. A lot of folks think, is there a connection with that? Well, there is in a way. It's not the 9th of Av. However, September 11th, 9/11, kind of fits something here. The 9th would fit the 9th day. 11 would be, what would 11 represent? Av, the month of Av, is the 11th day on the secular Jewish calendar. Remember, the Jews have 2 calendars just like we do. They got their religious calendar and they have their secular calendar. On the secular calendar, the month of Av is the 11th month on the calendar. Interesting, huh? So 9/11, the 9th day in the 11th month. I don't know if that means anything or not, but I figured I thought I'd throw it out there to you anyway. So this is what's going on. So keep an eye out. This is coming up on Tuesday. This is a bad day for the nation of Israel. And I'm sure there are other things that happened on these days that I haven't found, and I'm sure there's other things we don't know about that happened. You know, a lot of history is not recorded. They didn't have Fox News and CNN. Of course, they didn't have television, they didn't have radio, they didn't have internet. So if you got news, you got it through word of mouth, and so there you have it. This is what's coming up, the 9th of Av. So Tuesday in Israel, about 11 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, if you're on the East Coast, is the 9th of Av in Israel, the beginning of it. About 10 o'clock in the morning on Central Time on Tuesday will be the 9th of Av in Israel. I'm not saying anything bad's going to happen. And by the way, I hope nothing bad does happen. But in light of what's going on the Temple Mount and all the unrest, and by the way, the hatred of the Jews, there's never been as much hatred as I see today, not in my lifetime. And I mean, anti-Semitism it never left. I mean, it's creeping back again. And pray for the peace of Israel, the Bible says. And God's not done with that nation. God's not done with the Jew. And things are getting ready to happen. Things are going to happen. So keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open. You've been listening to God's Final Jubilee program. We're glad you joined us today. This is Brother Dan Goodwin. And subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it with your friends. If this is something that you enjoy, if this is something you find helpful, share it with your friends. And be sure to check out the brand new website, godsfinaljubilee.com. We've got a brand new look to it. Everything is easily accessible. The YouTube channel is there. The podcast channel is there. My schedule is there. I've got things coming up that you need to know about. I may be preaching in your area. I may be speaking nearby, and you wouldn't know about it. So be sure to go there and check out my speaking schedule. I'll be up at Niagara Falls somewhere the end of September 21st through the 23rd. Interesting dates right there. We'll share that with you later. But I'll be preaching a series of messages up there in the Niagara Falls area. So if you live up anywhere nearby there, you may want to check that out. We're going to do a prophecy conference there. So going to be in Maine in August. I got openings, going on vacation, but I do have openings. Be glad to share at your church if you're interested. So lots going on. Sign up for the newsletter, the email newsletter on my website, and the Facebook page. Be sure that you like the page and share it with your friends. Well, God's Final Jubilee program. I'm your host, Evangelist Dan Goodwin, and we'll see you next time on this in this same area here, same program, same stations, wherever you're listening to, podcast or YouTube channel. Looking forward to seeing you right here again. So until then, God bless you. Keep looking for the Lord to come.